Hola from the west side. It is me, DC the Purple Diva, and welcome to Not So Random Chat. Thursday thinking. I hope everyone is doing okay out there tonight. I am doing great myself. I am happy to say that although I didn't make my goal on my birthday of getting to 1.5K in friends here on YouTube, I did make that goal late last night. Overnight, I got over 5K. So I'll be pushing out a celebratory video in regards to the 5K. I'm sorry I'm a little late tonight, a lot late. Seems I've been doing these late night editions lately with you guys. But I'm going to try to get it back on track and be on here earlier, around by 9:30 my time. Because I know the later I come on, the later it is for my East Coast folk. And then I know that my friends across the pond and over on the continent, they're either at work or on their way to work. Hey, Terry. So, but I'm here. We're getting it together. I see that I've got like 5 people here, but only one person saying something in the chat. Well, wow, brother Terry gets it together. I did want to talk about, a couple of things that are going on. For those of you outside of the Los Angeles area, they will be having the memorial for the late Kobe Bryant. God, it's hard to say that. For the late Kobe Bryant and for his daughter Gigi here, and they will be doing it at the Staples Center. It's going to be on February the 24th. And I'm sure it's going to get national coverage. I don't know which network it's going to be on. It's probably going to be on all of them. Hey, Miss Pamela. So that's on February the 24th. They're going to be doing the memorial, the public memorial for Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gigi. And it will be held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And I believe they're taking down the memorial that's at the Staples Center this week. It's probably going to be down by this weekend, if it isn't already down. And this weekend are the Oscars. And the minister of music at my church actually is going to be performing at the Oscars. She's going to be singing background along with some other young ladies for Sir Elton John, who's going to be part of a tribute at this year's Oscars. So I might actually have to watch it, because I really wasn't going to watch the Oscars this year, because nobody of color was actually nominated. Oh, I take that back. The former football player who did the animation film called Hair Love, he is nominated for an Oscar, and he is African American. But other than that, I don't think anybody of color, definitely not in any of the major categories. You know, and I don't even know if the animation usually is televised though. Because I think, or do they do it on a different day? Y'all, I don't even know. I think it may be televised. So that would be interesting if that football player won, because that was a really cute little film he did. Man, I heard about that woman. Yeah. And my girl Lisa Leslie, shouts out to Lisa Leslie, fellow Trojan, shouts out. Yep. Put her in her place in person. And now she's hiding behind the network. Now Gayle King is hiding behind the network, saying that the network made her do it. Are you kidding me? Are you really going to do that? Is that how you're going to do it, Miss King? You're not going to stand up for your own deeds? David, Miss Pamela said hi. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm so sorry that I'm so late, y'all. And here's even what's worse. I am still cooking something really late right now. I know it's really late and we shouldn't be eating, but I don't think you tell a 25-year-old that they, almost 25-year-old that it's too late to eat. So we're fixing something to eat. Yeah. Shouts out to Lisa Leslie. That's what I say. But they've been dragging her. She's been dragged. She's been getting dragged on Black Twitter for bringing up a case that, number one, was dismissed. He was never, the charges were dismissed. All kinds of things came out in regards to the young lady. Not, to mention the fact that she had sex with multiple men during that 24-hour period. And Kobe was just one of them. Oh, yeah, I know Snoop Dogg. I know he went off. But Black Twitter has dragged her. She's gotten dragged all over Twitter. And she's being dragged on YouTube. Hey, Matt. Yeah. Hey, Sexy Tatty. So, in regards to Gayle King, I don't like her style of journalism. Now, in the case of R. Kelly, she did what she needed to do. But what she did in regards to Kobe, they have not even buried the man yet. I think the body has just been released to the family. Okay? And it was just totally disrespectful to the memory. It's too soon. If you are going to mention that stuff, wait till the man is in the ground. for you bringing up something from 20 years ago. They got that basically was dismissed. You know, I mean, you know, shouts out to her for, you know, getting where she is as far as in journalism. However, a lot of that is due to who she knows. A lot of that is due to who she knows. Sorry, guys. I'll be right. I kicked myself out of the broadcast. I'm back. I did not mean to do that. I did not mean to do that. They're almost ready. They're not ready, but they're almost ready. I told you guys I'm cooking. I'm doing the last thing that's on my stuff that's being cooked. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. Sorry. No, see, the thing is that I believe that Kobe had sex with that girl, but I believe that it was consensual. And most of the evidence points to that. Most of the evidence, you know, the evidence that they laid out points to the fact that it was consensual sex. And she called it rape because he didn't want to do anything but have sex with her. But after that, she had sex with somebody else. So what? You know, even back then, none of it added up. It just looked like it was a setup. Yeah, but rough sex, and I'm gonna have to make this 18 plus. Rough sex does not mean that you were raped, you know, or assaulted. And you know, if at some point in the act there was a no, then that's a whole different story. But she didn't say no. She approached him. He didn't approach her. So, you know, I'm definitely, I stand up for victims, but I don't believe that she was a victim. You know, and she said nothing over all of these years to make anybody think anything different. You know, and I mean, right now, both Gail and Oprah are pretty much in the doghouse. Both of them. You know, because, you know, I mean, first Oprah has those alleged victims of Michael on who were then discredited. You know, that was sloppy on her part. It was about sensationalism. So, and then, I think maybe Gail was feeling herself because she did do a good job with R. Kelly. But, girl, what you think you doing? What do you think you're doing? You knew very good, you knew doggone well that Black people were gonna roast you. And even if the network is the ones behind you putting that into the interview, you could have said no. You didn't have to do it. So therefore, we will continue to roast you because you could have said no. You knew how it would look with you being the Black face and a Black woman on the network asking that question of Lisa. Were you surprised that she went off on you as only she could do? That's true, Terry. I mean, Oprah ain't been over here with us for a minute. So she ain't been over here with us in a minute. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Pamela. But like I said, rough sex is not the same as, a sexual assault, because some people like it rough. Some people like it rough. Yeah, but Miss, these two women, y'all already know. I mean, first Oprah's does the mess with Michael, then she does the stuff with Russell, and then now we have Gail, doing exactly what the mainstream media is doing. Does she not see what she's doing to a Black man who is not even in the ground yet? Does she not understand what she's doing? And if she did understand what she was doing, she could have said no. But she knew what she was doing. Okay, and I'll give her, okay, say the network did, say the network is behind it. Like I said, you could have said no. You could have said, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to ask that. That's distasteful. You could have let them know. But nah, you're gonna hang yourself out there to dry. Go on, hang yourself out there, girl. Hang yourself out there. Matt, man, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Guys, 1 second. I'm walking across the room, so I don't see the chat right now. But yeah, I used to like Oprah. I never really was a Gayle King fan though, because I just felt like a lot of what she got was because of her being friends with Oprah, and then also too, she tried to be like Oprah, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. She wanted to be like her friend. You know, I'm not going to get into all the, the rumors that people say about their relationship being closer than, what they indicated to be. I'm going to leave that alone. Y'all know. Because even if it is the truth, it's not our business. How about that part? But what is our business is when they get out here and do stupid stuff as black women and make the rest of us look foolish. Because she doesn't understand by her doing that stuff, you are making it look like to white to the mainstream media that it's okay. They should do it too. And that's hardly the case. Hang that phone up. It's too late to be calling anybody. Hang the phone up. All right, I'm back in front of the computer. Yep, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Is that's why I said that Gail could have said no. She makes too much money. She could afford to say no. What were they going to do? Fire her for not asking a distasteful question like that? I'm just reading what you guys are saying in the comments. All right, guys, give me 1 second. I'm going to put y'all on mute for just one moment. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys, I'm back. I don't know why Gail's husband left. I don't know why they ended up breaking up, to be honest with you. Exactly, Terry. That's what I'm saying. She makes enough money that she could have said no. She makes enough money that she could have said no. And she didn't say no. Because if she had said no, she wouldn't have answered that question. Or it wouldn't have brought it up. Hey, Latu. Just talking about Gayle King being distasteful in wake of Kobe's death. And black people in America riding her. Okay, Terry, sorry. I'm eating. Let me know when you're ready to come up and I'll drop the link. Whenever you're ready. Matter of fact, let me get my mouse. so you can come up. I will drop the link for you, Terry. I'm still looking for that poem, you guys, that I told y'all about. The one that talks about the U.S. being a wasteland if it weren't for all the things that were invented by Black Americans throughout the years, including those traffic lights that we stop at. And really, if you think about it, those traffic lights were the basis for traffic lights around the world. Yep, around the world. Because the automobile was invented here. The traffic light was invented by a Black man. And it not only impacted this country, but every country. Hey, the real Brooklyn. But yeah, I gotta find that poem. And I'll bring it to you guys.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna drop the link for you, Terry. Just give me 1 second. All right, let's see. Copy. All right, I'm gonna put it in again. Fried chicken. Fried chicken. And French fries. Homemade fries. Yeah. Late dinner. No, she brought up, what Gayle King brought up, Latu, was the Kobe Bryant was accused of rape like about 15, almost 20 years ago, or very early in his career. The entire case got dismissed. And the person who made the accusation was found to not be credible. And the accusation was found to not be credible. So it was dismissed. But Gayle King decides to bring this up in an interview with Lisa Leslie. I don't know if she thought it was appropriate to do it in the light of the Me Too movement, but it was so disrespectful and in poor taste. Okay, let me let you up, Terry.
Hello.
Hey, Terry.
All right. You can hear me loud and clear, I take it?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to mute myself
Well,
when you start do your talking.
Okay. Well, let me just say real fast. What you were just talking about earlier about Oprah and Gail. I mean, look, they know these people who use these black people as tools. They know exactly who they're leading, you know, blacks are of choice that they can effectively use to get their point across and to perpetuate the problems, perpetuate, the perception that we see of black people in the worst light. And of course, everyone's got a price. And unfortunately, people are just all too willing. This is really, in many ways, it lends itself to some of the psychological blocks that are put in front of us, some of these impediments that are put in front of us, because people think this stuff is real, it's true, and it's just made up garbage to make it look like it's the reality. But we know that, that it isn't true. I just wanted to say that before I begin.
Absolutely. And I think that was the thing that really irked me the most is that she's rich enough to say no. She's rich enough that she could say no if in fact it really was coming from the network. But do I believe it was the network was behind it? No. I think she thought of it herself. And now that it didn't go the way she thought it was going to go, she's blaming the network.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I think a lot of things that they do, I think they know that they have an assignment, and a lot of things are implicit. I really think it's to the point where, people with the kind of experience that Gail and Oprah has working with these networks, being on television, what have you, I think that they know that, okay, they have a framework on the way they have to conduct themselves. And I think the embellishment is their own. So I do agree with that. But I think they understand that the actual framework, I think they understand implicitly what these people want. I really do.
Facts. So just
All right.
before Terry starts, I just want to let you guys know that everything that we talk about tonight is based on some of our opinion, but also on historical information in regards to the PLO. And we are simply giving you guys the facts and trying to give it to you guys as unbiasedly as possible, but we're not going to sugarcoat the truth.
Absolutely.
All right. So now I will turn it over to my brother, Nakuma Torre.
Thank you, sis. I appreciate you allowing me up here, and as always, it's an honor to be here. And thank you. Hello to everybody in the chat. Um, Glad you're here, and I'm glad to be back up here, continuing our series on the Palestinian Zionist conflict. Right now, we're going to be going into the decade of the 1980s. And, the information that I'm given is of a chronological nature. I've had to omit some details because, I think I've said this before, uh, a lot of details would run us into really a marathon live stream. I know Sis and anyone else, I'm sure, doesn't have that kind of time. So I've had to distill some things. However, the things that I'll go over here in this particular decade tended to stress themselves out throughout the entire year. Okay, so what I'll do is we can we can pick it up in the fall of 1980, whereas at this point tensions continued between combatants, Palestinian and the Zionist forces. Of course, Zionism as a policy encroaching upon the West Bank and Gaza areas. And what they were doing, they were forcibly removing Palestinians. And this was in direct violation of the UN partition of 1947. You remember that was the 56%, 44% split, although we know that wasn't fair anyway because the Zionists took over the sovereignty, wrested it from the Palestinians. However, at this particular time, during the 1980s, we saw upsurge in the settlements, the subdivisions that they were building expressly for Caucasians, or those who uh, invoked the right of return, which was a policy of Zionist Israel. Those identifying themselves with Zionism under the cloak of a fake Judaism. In fact, they were trying to elevate the religion of Judaism as a race. We've proven it in our earlier installments that that is false. But of course, the Palestinians themselves executed counterattacks against Zionism, which took place throughout the decades of the 80s as well. Now, the most prominent guerrilla operations Palestinians executed were of sort of 4 points. One, they ambushed Zionist infantry units. Uh, they executed strategic bombing of supply and petroleum dumps that were inside the occupied area of Palestine. They also sabotaged motor transport facilities. And of course, the last, the elimination of isolated Zionist individuals and groups. Now, in 1980, we also saw in the United States the election of Ronald Reagan. This brought in a new era of conservatism to the fore. He was, of course, a very staunch supporter of Zionism, and he was definitely for the illegal state of Israel. Excuse me. 1981, Reagan takes office, of course. The Zionist forces bombed PLO headquarters. At the time, it was stationed in Lebanon. They killed 300 Palestinians. Some of them were very prominent members of the PLO. Also, in that same year, Palestinians executed more counterattacks on Zionist targets. These were conducted from the PLO bases in Lebanon at a particular time. As you remember, they had to move across the border into Jordan. They were moved out of Jordan in the 70s, and we'll see in a little bit that they actually were forced out of Lebanon as well. Now, later on in this year, 1981, Ronald Reagan dispatched a envoy. His name was Philip Habib. I don't know if anyone has heard of this gentleman, but this was a guy who brokered a very tenuous ceasefire between the Zionists and the PLO. This lasted approximately just a year, and the fighting resumed again. This is a recurring theme, of course, between the two forces. somebody will bring some third party will bring them to the table. We've seen that in the our installment in the late 70s between Yasser Arafat and the leader of Zionist Israel at that time. I believe his name was Menachem Begin. We also saw an appeasement from the Egyptians, President Anwar Sadat, which really reverberated and angered a lot of the far left-leaning Arab guerrillas. And we'll see what happens here in a minute, because in that particular year, the Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was assassinated. And he was assassinated by members of the Islamic Jihad for that reason. So these things reverberated back and forth through 1981, going into 1982, where we find Palestinian militants attempting to assassinate an ambassador that Zionist Israel had in Great Britain. His name was Shlomo Argor. But of course, it was unsuccessful. However, this then led to Zionist forces invading Lebanon. Lebanon, a sovereign nation. Now, the Zionists made the claim that they had to go over into Lebanon unannounced to protect the northern area of Palestine from terrorist attack. Also, this is a sort of a excuse that we've seen reoccurred year after year, decade after decade, as excuse for them to attack Palestinians. Most of the time, they were attacking non-combatants, is what we find out. However, in addition to invading Lebanon, they occupied the Lebanese city of Beirut. Of course, many may not know that this led to the 1982 Lebanese War. Yes.
Now I was saying, really? Now I was saying, really? I didn't know that.
Yes. That situation with Lebanon in the early 80s, all the bombings that was going on. And yeah, it had a lot to do with that. They were exacerbating the situation. And as I said earlier, most of their targets were non-combatants. So I guess we see, well, I know for a fact, we see that the Palestinians were counterattacking, really doing the same thing. And definitely we saw that of the further left-leaning Palestinian Liberation Front and other left-leaning guerrilla groups that didn't totally agree, of course, with the PLO. But moreover, during this 1982 war, the Zionists, now get this, they use anti-PLO Christian Arab militias that they armed, okay? They armed them as a proxy to carry out a massacre in which the count varied between 700 and 3,500 unarmed Palestinians, non-combatants, mind you, were killed. In the meantime, as Arab attacked Arab, Zionist forces surrounded these camps. We're still talking about Lebanon, with tanks and military checkpoints. The Palestinians were constantly getting shelled in the meantime in the occupied territories, and I'm talking about Gaza Strip and the West Bank as well. Now, it's important to note here. Now, this massacre was a pre-planned maneuver by Zionist Israel. Now, what this resulted in, because it was so devastating, again, the count was between 700 and 3,500 people. This resulted in the PLO having to move their headquarters once again. This time they moved it, and this is what I didn't know until I researched this. They moved it into North Africa. They moved it into Tunisia. And for anybody in Tunis, specifically Tunis, the city of Tunis, and for those who may not know, I'm not going to assume that Nobody here knows where it is, but for those who may not know, Tunisia is situated in North Africa between Algeria and Libya. It's very, very interesting here. So I didn't know that they headquartered themselves on African soil all this time. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm burping. Sorry, y'all. So that brings us into 1983, all of 1983 and all of 1984. This is what was going on. The Zionists grudgingly complied with demands from the UN and US requests to withdraw from Lebanon. Now get this. But in this withdrawal, they maintain a security zone inside of Lebanon. So really, essentially, they didn't totally withdraw at all. This security issue, as we've heard for years, has become the plausible reasoning for Zionism's annexationist aspirations. Now, I think we need to understand that the borders on the northern, southern, and the eastern part, because the western part borders the Mediterranean Sea, as I'm sure everyone knows, but these other parts where these borders are, where you have Jordan, Lebanon, these borders are really fluid in the first place. Uh, these people are the only people, and I'm talking about Zionist Israel, that have what we considered undeclared borders. Because if you look at some of the maps from 1917, then you fast forward to 1947, then you can fast forward to 1967, and these are years that certain things happened that we've talked about already. And you fast forward to today, you see sort of a different, the borders tend to fluctuate, if you will. So what I found out was they've never declared rigid borders. I think this tends to lend it to the fact that they are annexationist. It's something that I think that's implied. And again, the security zone excuse is they consider it plausible reasoning for such intrusions on a sovereign state. And of course, in my mind, that's an act of war anywhere else. That's something that is intolerable. But yet, because of the antagonism of the Zionists inside that part of the world, inside really the Arab world, they're allowed to do it. Going into 1985, something very interesting happened. A Syrian lady from the Syrian Social Nationalist Party by the name of Sanaa Hadley. I don't know if anybody's heard of her. She was the first female suicide bomber. She detonated a bomb that killed, it was strapped to her body. She killed herself, and she took 4 Zionist soldiers with her. Very, very important. I had no idea that females were suicide bombers, but as early as 1985, of course, later that year, 60 PLO members from Tunis. As you remember, the PLO moved their headquarters from Lebanon to Tunis, Tunisia, North Africa. 60 PLO members at the headquarters, once again, were killed in a deliberate attack by Zionist rockets. This was called Operation Wooden Leg for anyone who's interested in that. There's details on that as well. You can look that up. This was a Zionist attack on Palestinians on African soil. So this is what this means to me. When I see this, I get to the point where I say, okay, they feel the right to attack at any time on the African continent. Therefore, here again, the Zionists make their wrongdoing our business. We can see clearly that the Zionists are no respecters of borders or national sovereignty of other nations, as we can see. So this further reveals their primal hatred that characterizes Zionism. So I think we can see here as proof positive, if you don't remember anything else that we've learned through this series, remember this: Zionism is racism. Now, uh, later, within this time frame of that year, the left-leaning, left of the PLO, mind you, Palestinian Liberation Front, uh, something that is probably more familiar with some of us, uh, they seized a yacht, Kililaro, which was heading out of Italy to Israel. But the 4 members of the Palestinian Liberation Front seized it. Some people say hijacked. That's what you'll see. I say seized. This was an answer to what I just talked about, the PLO, the attack on the PLO headquarters by Zionist air assault. The Achille Lauro was off the coast of Egypt at the time. It was heading to Israel. Once they boarded and secured control of the ship, the demand went out to release 50 Palestinians out of Israel prisons. Now, that didn't happen. One person was killed. It was an invalid gentleman that was killed, who was a Zionist himself. The seizing of the yacht, again, was a retaliation of the PLO bombing. The PLF, with other members of the PLO, were launching these kind of attacks on a regular basis. They were both civilian and military targets, but mainly in the northern part of Israel throughout the 1980s. The Achille Lauro was the United States got involved, the Italian government, the Egyptian government. They finally left the ship, and the Egyptian government actually allowed them, after some negotiations, not only leave the ship, come through Egypt, and leave through Egypt back to Tunis, which upset a lot of folks in the West. They wanted to try these people for murder, and just the fact that they were using the word hijack in all their reports and the speeches that President Reagan and the Zionist government was giving, they was upset at that. So, but that definitely was very, very effective in getting the attention of the Western nations. But just the very act of that, on one hand, yes, vulgar, these people were non-combatants, but this shows, in my opinion, as what an embattled and dispossessed people of their land and resources will resort to fight against genocide. Now, going into 1986, here we find that we find out that Zionist Israel, through reports of a technician by the name of Mordecai Benunu, Israel, for the first time, we find out, does possess nuclear weapons. This was revealed by that former Israeli technician that I just mentioned, Mordecai Benunu. This was reported to the British newspaper, the Sunday Times. Very, very significant, because for years, I remember myself as a child, they were denying the fact that they had nuclear weapons. Obviously, the contradiction is that no one else is allowed. Essentially, any nation of color isn't allowed or wanted to, or rather, yes, allowed to have nuclear armaments. But obviously, Israel, being a strategic point and peerless point in the world were allowed to have those particular nuclear armaments, therefore tipping the balance of power. Further antagonisms, further tension. Now, the Zionists continued to forcibly remove Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza Strip in the meanwhile, and continued to build subdivisions for Khazars and other Caucasoids under the cover of the right of return policy, as I said earlier. Those were claiming Judaism as a race. This further fueled antagonisms. Takes us into 1987. Now we find this is a very, very significant year because this is when the first Intifada began. And what this Intifada uh, uh, was, it was a Palestinian uprising within the state of Zionist Israel, within the so-called fluctuating borders. This was against the occupation, specifically their occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. You know, bombing Palestinians, their homes to rubble, and then building settlements for other Caucasians. So that brought this Intifada on. Now, in this particular uprising, it's important to note that about 1,127 Palestinians were killed in this campaign, but 16,000 more were in prison, and even many more, which I couldn't find the number at this point, but many more were tortured. Now, the Intifada, it began in a piecemeal fashion with demonstrations and civil disobedience. But then it escalated into a full-blown riots in short order, including the participation of political organizations, union groups, and ordinary working class people who appeared in large numbers, but principally in the metropolitan areas of the occupied nation. Activities included, we see this a lot, the throwing of rocks at Palestinian police forces, but they also stepped it up as a protest movement developed and increased in sophistication. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Molotov cocktails. It's a petrol bomb put in bottles with wick. You light it and throw it, and it explodes and damages whatever structure that it lands on. Something that was used by many blacks in the inner cities in the 60s. They stepped that up here, and Palestinians did so here. And of course, also resistance by guerrilla ops against Zionist occupation forces. These people were guerrillas, they were civilians though. Of course, the Zionists, they stepped up their repression by killing Palestinians, deporting others, closing universities, continuing to destroy settlements, and arresting hundreds of them. Now, by December of 1987, we would see a full-scale uprising. This broke out in the Gaza Strip. This was signaled a new era in mass resistance. This hadn't happened before. But what we find out is they did lack necessary arms to face the Zionist military. But as good as as much as they could in an organized fashion, Palestinian fighting became inventive. Many of them started wearing masks. I said earlier, they were throwing petrol bombs. They were also leading Zionist forces into effective ambushes and things of that nature. And it even got to the point of the Palestinians, get this, it got to the point where the Palestinians rejected Zionist daylight savings time, and the Palestinians instead worked to their own clock to assert a semblance of independence, which I thought was very cool. The Intifada itself, go right ahead, Sid.
Now I was gonna say that was cool. I was just thinking about how Arizona, and I think there's a couple of states that don't do daylight savings time here in the United States, and I think it is out of rebellion.
Yeah, yes,
All right,
absolutely.
I'm gonna go back to
And
mute.
okay. And as much as they could, they, amidst all of this activity throughout the 1980s, the Palestinians still did what they could to live as a independent state as much as they could, although they understood and much of the outside world understood that they were occupied because the whole country was taken over and they were subordinates within their country. But within the Gaza Strip and West Bank, they tried to live as autonomously as they possibly could under the circumstances. So that precipitated the rebellion to work by their own clock schedule. And so in the early stages, though, of this intifada, it was led by a unified national command. So it got to that sophisticated point. But this was a grouping of PLO organization bodies. Now, they also backed military operations with a network of well organized strikes, boycotts, closures, and demonstrations. So we see two sort of a two-fisted attack here. We see these things, these strikes, these civil disobedience, boycotts, closures, and demonstrations. On the other end, we see the guerrilla activity, the ambushes, the rock throwing, of course, which is very effective as well. Because if you get a lot of people throwing rocks, I mean, you can definitely do some damage, and also the petrol bombs as well. So uh, they were being very critically organized, is what I have noticed. Now, there was a disagreement between the National Command, which was the grouping of the PLO organization bodies, and Hamas. It was at this time that the Islamic resistance movement, which is what the Hamas was, they opposed the overall tactics of the Intifada. They actually believed that they were more revolutionary. And I'm not quite sure. I think it's relative at this particular point because I think I see that the national command of the Intifada was doing some of the same things that Hamas did in the 60s. But they opposed these tactics because, and they sought to take it over. What I got was anything short, what they thought of total armed struggle for the complete liberation of Palestine was a relinquishment of Palestinian rights. Excuse me. Sorry, y'all. Burping tonight. now, besides the focus on political assassinations the of PLO leaders, two other important milestones were reached at the end of the decade. The first one was in 1988. Uh, the Palestinians did manage, through the National Council, to proclaim an independent state of Palestine at a meeting in Algiers. If anybody's interested, the vote was 253 to 46. However, this only covered the geographical areas of the West Bank and the Gaza. This happened around November the 15th, 1988. State of Palestine is then subsequently recognized by 138 UN members. And then, of course, in December, the second milestone, the UN General Assembly did acknowledge the Palestinian Declaration of Independence in a resolution as well. So it did give their plight some legitimacy once again. I guess this was more of a de facto recognition, and what they were given in the 60s was more of a de jure, if you will, more of a nominal, and this was the one in the late 80s was more de facto, something that the West protested as well, came out vehemently against. Also in 1989, through that year, 302 more Palestinians were murdered by Zionist Khazars. June 16th of that year, a bus in Tel Aviv, bus 405, it was, I couldn't get the count of the people who were killed there, but this was a suicide bomb attack inside the borders of occupied Palestine at the end of that year that killed multiple people, obviously, because it was reported. So it had to be many people on that particular bus. But this noted, the thing is, it's noted the first suicide attack inside the borders of occupied Palestine. These are the things that emanated the entire decade. Again, we can see the struggle going back and forth, attack, counterattack, deliver attack, Zionist attack on non-combatants, Palestinians doing both as well. And, the struggle, heightened. The Intifada was another development that happened, which probably was time for that inside the occupied territory because everything was happening, as you remember, when they were finally pushed out, some of the PLO guerrilla forces into Lebanon, or I'm sorry, into Jordan and into Lebanon, now into Tunis, Tunisia. It was outside. And so this Intifada was specifically inside. So that was sort of now we see as I said earlier, a two-fisted attack going into the 1990s in the next installment. That's where we'll pick it up, sis. And I'll put a pin in it there. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
And just for anyone who doesn't understand what we're talking about, I'm just going to give you guys like a high level. When he refers to the Khazars, the majority of the Jewish people in the state of Israel are Khazarian Jews. The Khazarian Jews are people who converted to Judaism after the death of Christ. For those of you who are Christians, they are not the biblical Jews that are in the Bible. The biblical Jews are people of color. So I would say, with the exception of the people who came from Ethiopia, who are from the tribe of Dan, those are probably the only ones who are actually descendants of the historical Jews, Hebrew, Israelites in the Bible. And a lot of the struggle with the land is because of that fact. But these people being in that land is not so much about fulfilling biblical prophecy, because they can't fulfill biblical prophecy because they aren't those people. It's about power and it's about resources.
Very true.
Yeah.
We definitely covered that, but for those who haven't been with us through the entire series thus far, it's definitely a great synopsis the sister just gave. Quite right. So, we can see who wields the power.
And Matt, I'll spell it in the chat. That's how it's spelled. It's a country that it's a region that is north of Turkey and east of Europe that existed around the time of the Ottoman Empire. So, but
Absolutely, absolutely.
you can if you actually you can Google that, or you can look for the Khazarian Jews. There are some videos on YouTube, and then there are also some books about them that talks about the true history of them prior to them getting into Europe, and says how they got to Europe, all the history that they don't talk about. They just, and I believe it's because a lot of them don't know it.
And let me just interject to say that my reference is name is Mark Tesler, The History of the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. That's my reference, and if anyone wants to look it up, they're free to do so. It gives a chronological account and analysis, much as I've given you and Sister have chimed in on, of this problem.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, Terry, for really helping me out with putting this information out there. You know,
I'm enjoying it,
yeah,
sis. I'm enjoying it.
and those of you who are not subscribed to Brother Nakuma Tore's channel, please, you know, subscribe to his channel. He has videos on his channel that he's building up, and he will be going live shortly. So he'll also be talking about some of the things that he talks about on my platform, on his own platform as well.
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone have any questions though? Any questions that I can answer?
Oh,
I'd be glad
I
to
see
do
Matt
so.
is saying, why try to stop a never-ending war?
Well, it's about justice. I mean, you have to tell the people who were attacked and dispossessed of their land. Um, if if you don't resist an evil force such as that, you run the risk of genocide because it's the Zionists who will tell you that these people are Jews and they're the victims of the Nazi Holocaust, and they're the people who are from and we've discussed this. They're not from Egypt, but they're the people who came into uh, this land because God had them to fulfill a biblical prophecy. And all these lies have been told, and so everybody's looking at it that way. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the history as we've given it to you, you'll find that the victims are the Palestinians who are resisting genocide from a force that have not only attached itself to British and American imperialism, but have been armed to the teeth by both countries, by both powers. So you can see here that they're really not given a third option. It's either fight and resist or totally be totally wiped out, because believe me, that's what Zionism wants to do. And not only that, the secondary thing is they're annexationists too. They want to take over all that land. They all up now. They're trying to get into Sudan at this particular point. And so I mean they have no respect, as I said earlier, of national boundaries or national sovereignty. So you have no other choice. You have no choice unless you want to lay down and be killed and wiped out.
And I mean, they're not just, the thing is that the ultimate goal, I believe, and this is my opinion, let me state that, is to expand their borders to encompass Saudi Arabian land, and to also encompass land that is currently part of the continent of Africa.
Absolutely.
So that's my opinion as to what the ultimate plan is. But the thing is that you have to think about it. If this was really, if we're talking about the quote unquote biblical nation. Well, God acts on their behalf, okay? The Most High acts on their behalf. I don't see the Most High acting in here anywhere, because I mean, you would truly see the hand of God. I'm just saying, all of this is all man manipulated to make it fit something that it doesn't fit. And it's a deception. Because in reality, you know, knowing, you know, what we know, the people who are most likely the true people who should be inhabiting that land are probably the people, are probably those of us who are in the diaspora, because it's probably our ancestors who are the actual biblical Jews, because they were people of color and they came from the continent of Africa and inhabited that land at that time over 2,000 years ago. But they were from the continent of Africa, which was a proper line back then, because it was never called Africa. Europeans renamed it Africa.
Let me quote. That's a great, sis. I agree with you. I like to get to Mac's question. So, Nkrumah, do you think U.S. fuels the fire? Well, the U.S. authorizes a little over $8 billion a year in economic and military aid. They have full use of full access to Western technology, and so, of course, they have their own resources that they built. They also have, as I mentioned earlier, nuclear capability. So that kind of tells you the answer of what it is. And of course, since the establishment of the illegal state of Israel by Zionist politicians, Zionist forces as an ideology, absolutely. Have to keep in mind that before they ever finally were protected to seize Palestine, the world was already carved up and occupied. And I've talked about this. Imperialism. There's a book, Vladimir Lenin, who was the first Soviet premier, wrote this book in 1917 for this particular purpose. But he was correct. So there was, you know, this story about, you know, these people were promised this land, and you know the lie is because this is really the cloak for it all. You know, this is the foreground, and that no, that's not the case at all. Everything was already occupied, so they had to attach themselves. In this case, to British imperialism. We talked about the Balfour Declaration. We talked about how they came in, and at this time they were only 8% of the population. It was 600,000, roughly 600,000 Palestinians, 60,000 Europeans, people of European stock. In hold on for a second.
Yeah, and while he has us on mute, guys, because you guys have to think about it, a lot of the Khazarian Jews, a lot of them are also, you know, are in the Americas. There's still a lot that are still in Europe, but a lot, you know, they went to Israel or they came to America. Some are in South America as well. Some are in South America as well. Because I have friends who are Jews who are from South America, from places like Argentina.
Of course, the Zionist movement was started by Theodor Herzl. It's called the Father Zionist Movement in a place called Belize, Switzerland, in 1897. And he wrote a book though, and I believe I want to say 1898, called The Jewish State, and that's what really got this thing, um, the idea of a national home for the Jews. But see, what people may not understand is, one, Theodore Herzl was an atheist. An atheist is someone who denies the existence of God altogether. So let's just take the God and the Jewish as a religion out of it right then and there. It kind of nullifies that, although they are using. And so when people don't know the history, I'm just talking to Mac here, they don't know the history of these things, and the propaganda is used. I made this. Deke had a Deaconess Defense, that is, had a live stream earlier this evening.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking to his sister Lightbearer about some things, and she was talking about how our minds as Black people are we do what we're pretty much programmed to do by white people, and follow their laws, and we don't think for ourselves. And I agree with her. And I told her that propaganda has been heavily used, and but propaganda, there's two principles to propaganda that I've seen in the last 30 years. Propaganda can either awaken the masses or can subvert the mindset of the people.
Exactly.
Our accumulated experience have shown that it has subverted us, and it's part and parcel of the problem. The same thing here with Zionist ideology juxtaposed to really using Judaism as a shield, but at the same time forwarding it as a race, which is on both points, it's just totally a lie. But it's worked. And I can talk to people now about it. They think that that's who I'm talking about, the Bible. And how dare I think I've said this before to a few people in this group.
Mm-hmm.
People will act like I'm crazy or I'm anti-Semitic.
But
they're not Semites.
But the problem is, and that's the thing, is that many of us Black people, and I'm not going to even say just in the United States. I'm just going to say period. The issue is that when we look at the Bible, we don't realize and don't recognize ourselves all in there. And
absolutely.
And that's where the issue is. It's like when you read all of the Old Testament and you hear where all of these people are, you have to realize that they were all people of color. You have to realize that. You have to realize that there was no way that Moses could have pulled off being an Egyptian, prince, if he was not the same color as the Egyptians.
Right.
And we all know that at that particular point in history, the Egyptians were definitely people of color.
Jesus too, when he was taken to Egypt for 12 years.
That's the thing. Everyone in the Bible, with the exception of the people who were actually Greeks and Romans, were people of color. The Sumerians were people of color.
Absolutely. Negroid. Yeah. Yeah, that's it really needs to be understood.
Yeah, because what people don't understand is that the biblical Israelites were pulled out of nations of people on the continent of Africa. Abraham was a man of color. He came from the land of Canaan. But it's hard to get people to some people to understand that, because because of the way that Christianity has been whitewashed, and it has, they don't see themselves in the Bible because it's not made plain for them.
Yeah, I believe it gets back to the propaganda as well.
Oh yeah, because Yeah, exactly.
I totally agree with you. I think furthermore for me, those reasons and other reasons tend to make it our business. I mean, we know that Judaism, it was definitely born in Africa, specifically in Ethiopia. That makes it our issue. I think anytime, and if you're anyone who has any kind of respect and or love for Africa, anytime Africa is harmed in any way, I think it makes it our business. You know, if somebody comes in there uh, and attacks uh, people on African soil, that's our business as far as I'm concerned. I believe we're a global people. I don't see myself as just a number minority inside of a nation that that I'm coexisting with within white supremacy. I see a global white supremacy, but and it attacks us strategically that way, and we must think in a global sense in terms of getting out of the conundrum. And so uh, that's what makes this our business. No, I'll probably never go to occupy Palestine. Maybe I will, but I don't have any plans to at this time. But when you look at how they use Judaism, I'm speaking to the chat, we have to understand that once we become knowledgeable and understand not just the history of what it means and how it's being used here, oh yeah, we can't just stand idly aside and allow them to continue to use it for white supremacist purposes, because that's really what it is. They use it uh, as an ethno state to actually give all of the. So when they talk about rights, in terms of civil rights and voting rights and uh, uh, different individual freedoms, they're really talking about the Caucasians. They're not talking about anybody else.
Yeah, because
People have
they have to keep giving us the right to vote, y'all. They have to keep re-giving it to us.
absolutely.
We don't
Yeah,
we don't actually have it, because we are Americans, but because our ancestors were slaves, they have to keep giving it to us. The Voting Act of 1964.
yeah.
Go
Not
take a look
permanent.
at it, guys. Just
It is
think.
not permanent. Yeah. In fact, let me just add, sis, that every 10 years they have to vote on whether or not they're going to continue it or end it. And it's always, and they'll bring it on TV. And if you're around a report, you probably hear it, since now we're in information age, mass media. But
yeah, the last time it came up for vote was recently, and
okay,
it made headlines.
it's normally the last item on the agenda before they go on recess all the time. They make sure it's the last thing they do. They're not going to get, so it doesn't even have a high priority to it. You're like, okay, this is it. All right, here they have to look at it at that particular point. Time is almost run out of the session. I mean, that's how much in disregard they see it. People need to understand that we're living in a tenuous situation here. If ever certain mindsets that wanted to roll back some of the gains that our people have sweat, bled, and died for, they can do it. They have the numbers. If they have they have to definitely have the wherewithal. They have the will and the nerve to do it. And we're looking at some of the precursor now with the emboldening of the far radical, crazy right wing that's undergirding Trump. It can very well spiral out of control in a real sense. I already feel a disenfranchisement personally myself that's happening all over the place.
I know. I mean, I
Very, very,
that's why when people tell me they don't vote, they don't even understand. I'm like, you do not understand. My parents were among those who did the actual sit-ins when they were in college.
right.
And so I vote because I know that it's a very temporary thing. And they've never actually made it a permanent law. And you have to ask yourself why. why no president has ever, why no Congress has ever just put something together to make it a permanent law so that they don't have to keep voting on it every day on 10 years.
Has to
The
do with
next time that they'll be voting on it will be in 24.
mhm.
At the end of whoever the next president's term is.
Right.
And so Terry, how do you feel about the Iowa caucus right now, with Buttigieg appearing to be the front runner, right, from that one caucus?
I haven't taken a look at it yet. I haven't watched it very closely. I have to admit, I haven't been by TV nor have I looked at it on YouTube. I can do it tonight though. Not really sure what's going on. I mean, I understand it, but I don't know exactly who all the players are right now.
Well, it appears right now that the top four are Buttigieg, Sanders, Warren, and Biden.
Oh Lord! Wow, pretty weak lineup.
And Biden came in fourth, but we don't even know if that's accurate, because of their screw up. So now we really need to the next one will be in New Hampshire, and I believe the primary here in California is in March as well. So
yeah. I've always felt that when they began, none of them are strong enough to garner enough votes to beat Trump. I really don't think so, unless barring another major. It has to be such a controversy of such major proportions that, of course, people lose confidence in the presidency and in Trump, and then of course he'd be easy pickings. But I do believe though that the insertion of Bloomberg and the strategy there, yeah, I think he is still in there, isn't he?
Yeah,
Bloomberg?
well, yeah, Bloomberg right now, and he's spending all of this money. I don't think he was under the people. They didn't have him on there to be selected at the Iowa caucus. But I think he will be on there. I know he'll be on there for California.
Right.
So he'll be on there by the third one, but he should be on there for the New Hampshire as well.
Right. And I think that he's there to really, I don't think he's going to win anything, but he's there to soften up Trump. He's also there to sort of split the vote, if you will, to try to soften him up as we go into these other primaries. And I think that that's the only possible scenario that could very well weaken Trump, but we'll have to see as well. I mean, he certainly has a dough.
Only one who put up an ad on Sunday during the Super Bowl like Trump. Because he's the only one who has that kind of money. He's got the same kind of money that Trump does. Absolutely. The only difference between him and Trump is that he actually has held a public office before.
Right. Right. He was mayor of New York, was he not?
Yep.
Yeah. So
and who knows, maybe it will take a New Yorker to beat this person.
Yeah, you think so? I mean, it's certainly been a disaster, though. I will say that. I do believe that the Senate missed a mark on that. I think that the evidence was damning.
I think they're scared of him because he's crazy.
Yeah, you've always seen that if the party's in power, same as the White House or the president. I think the only time in terms of impeachment, when we look at Nixon, I believe in '74, I believe that was a extremely Democratic Congress on both houses. So he knew good and well it was a fait accompli. He really had to just resign, because in this case, of course, he had a slim Republican, staunch but slim Republican majority. I'm surprised Romney voted the other way. It's kind of funny. I said
Because
to myself,
Romney hates Trump.
right, exactly. I was going
It
to
was
say,
personal for him. He doesn't care. Trump can't do anything to him, and he knows that.
right. Well, they're going to get him. Let's put it that way. Politically, it'll be a get Romney squad, I'm sure.
Romney's in Utah.
Right.
Nobody's going to run against him. He's going to sit there. They don't like Trump in Utah. He's fine.
I agree. But they're gonna definitely make some things up that
it's just going to be difficult for him because he's in the same party.
Right. Exactly.
But we all know why Trump is a Republican. He's not a real Republican. He's just a Republican because that's the only way he can get into the presidential election again. So anyway,
right. Absolutely. So, but yeah, very interesting though. We'll have to see.
And he pretends to be a person, a spiritual person, a person of God. It just makes me want to throw up. Makes me want to throw up.
Surely he doesn't think anybody believes that. Not at this point.
Rock.
Wow, that's crazy.
He's doing that to appease the Christian Republicans. But but here's the problem: is the majority of those people are also have some racist tendencies, unfortunately, and they call themselves Christians. Agreed.
Absolutely, they do. That's where it comes from, anyway. By the way, it's always been dominantly intolerant. The religion and all the religions that they've created. They created all of them that you see in America in the first place.
Because things like when they came to America, you only have like a handful. The rest of these popped up here in this country.
Oh yeah,
Baptist is from here.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, that's why you have a Southern Baptist, and then you have another Baptist, and there's been multiple splits within the Baptist church because of racism, even recently.
Now, would that be like the Methodist and the Presbyterian and Episcopalian? Those folks, Lutheran, those folks, right?
Right. All of that came out of the Lutheran church.
Right. Mormon, Dutch.
And the Mormons, that came out of that man was out of his mind. He was hallucinating. So,
right. Joseph Smith, right?
Yeah. He was hallucinating. So.
Yeah, I heard he was crazy. I've studied a little bit on him, but not a whole lot. I do have some information that I've studied here with me on some religions, but not heavy, just some of the surface stuff, though, I will say that.
Yeah, but that is one of the things that I do want to kind of touch on, that I not just touch on, but I am going to be exploring, is talking about some of the, the religions, the religious sects within Christianity here in the United States, really. And
that'll be great.
And why there's so many issues for so many people who are Black in those. That's why so many of us jump out of denominations and go to non-denominational. If we're going to stay a Christian, we go to churches that just look at what's in the actual Bible, and the church that I'm at, I just happen to have a pastor who feels that it's important, even though our congregation is not all Black, but because it is majority, she feels it's important that the people that are there know where we are in the Bible. She's done like extensive studies so that we are very aware of our presence in the Bible. She says, you can't think of this, your relationship with God, as thinking about the white man's religion. That's why it's about a relationship and not about religion.
Yes,
But
yes. I too have done some research in the Bible. I don't attend church, but I definitely have some. For us as incrumists, though, we tend to look at religion because we've always been highly religious. As
mhm,
a We've always wanted to use it critically as an arm of revolution, meaning that Marx talks about it being the opium of the masses. We disagree.
mhm,
We feel that it can be critically used without taking away any of its integrity or its natural intent to help free our people as well. And so that's part and parcel in terms of my, in terms of what I have to understand of it. We use everything at that, at least ideologically at this particular point. And I have some. I won't go over right now. Maybe when we do that live stream. But I
yeah,
have uh, uh, I'm sure you're some scriptures that I'm sure you're familiar with that definitely show that yes, these people were black in the Bible. There's no doubt about it. So when you say that, I definitely understand where you're coming from.
yeah, and I think that just probably going, and that might be something that I may pursue this month, since it is Black History Month, just to
Yeah,
kind of tell people about all of the people in critical figures in the Bible that were actually people who were black. I mean,
oh,
people may not
absolutely,
know, but David was black. You know, it's like he was a man of color. You know,
absolutely.
um, Moses, like I said, Esther, in the book of Judges, Deborah,
Right,
you
right,
know, going through the people, just looking at you have to look at where they were geographically, because
absolutely,
up until a certain period in time, the majority of civilization was in Africa,
absolutely. That it was.
and most and the Old Testament is basically in Africa. So that's what people don't understand. When you understand where they were, then you understand who they were.
Agreed. Agreed. I think also when we look at Genesis 10, and we look at the genealogy of Noah. I
Yep.
mean, man, that right there. Once I studied that, it was over. You couldn't tell me nothing that these people weren't black, and the fact that we had more descendants coming out of Genesis. We had 31, and I think
I
Shem
mean, but
had
people tried it, and people. I mean, if you look at the crazy things where people try to make Noah's sons three different colors. They weren't three different colors. They were all black.
right. Well, yeah, they try to say Japheth was the European guy, and you know he
Well,
certainly had
yeah. Okay.
less.
We don't even want to go into the fact that there are two species on this planet that intermingled.
Right, right,
So
absolutely. I was trying to get to my.
I'm
I was,
like, I'm
I was
like,
trying.
you know,
Oh, absolutely. I saw my. I'm opening my Bible here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have my. Make sure I have my scripture. I call it the Hamitic connection to the kingdom of God. I have about close to 20 scriptures here that just, I mean, and I was doing this just to combat the racists that I would find on Twitter. Uh, at one point on YouTube, I think I mentioned before I even started my channel, I would go around some of these comment sections and we would go back and forth. Me and others were going back and forth with these races, and we'd be wearing their behind, as I've said. We would just run them out of the comment section. They didn't want to deal with us no more because the facts was just wearing them out. They couldn't. They would try to come at us with certain stuff. They just wasn't prepared. But and part of this was this just some of these uh a lot of it is from Genesis, Matthew, Kings, 1 Kings. I can go on and on, but
Yeah. And,
gotta be well armed for these idiots.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's, just, this is, it's not even about people, about someone, being a Christian. It's just about people knowing, not looking at the Bible as, white men. Well, if it is for white men, then they're reading about us. Okay?
Yeah, yeah,
They're reading about us.
right.
You
I
know,
don't think
they,
they knew.
you know, they're following a man who hung on a cross that looked like us. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's good to be well armed uh, with this information. Uh, get into an intellectual conversation, but
exactly.
certainly, certainly, people who want to attack. Oh yeah, you know, they have no. I mean, it's almost like an unfair battle going in with some of these races. They really think their hate for you is enough. It doesn't work like that.
No,
You
you just have to be knowledgeable. And like I said, because for all intents and purposes, although the Bible is, yes, a book of inspirational book, it also has historical factors in it, and there are
Right,
historical things that are in the Bible that you can look at what's in there and see exactly where that happened and find that that's something that truly did happen.
right.
So, I mean,
Absolutely.
you
It's a
know,
beautiful book, no doubt about it. It's a beautiful
and
book.
that's what I'm saying. Um, it's just people understanding. I just say, in Black people understanding that we are in that book, and anything that you were told to the contrary is not true. you know you don't have to be a Christian, or anything, but you do need to know the truth about your presence in the Bible. And then,
Absolutely.
I mean, and then you can go on your merry way.
Yeah,
And but you have to know who you are, because the whole thing is that they don't want you to know who you are.
agreed. Agreed. I think that's where a lot of their influence comes from, the perception or misperception that we've gotten that we are so we've socialized or we've been socialized, and therefore a lot of us unwittingly hand down this ignorance from one generation to the next. Of course, we see how some of us act out here. Uh, they think being black is doing foolish things, cussing folks out, stealing,
Right.
robbing, that kind of thing. So I think, to me, again, I think that's not only a miseducation, but I think it still goes to a lot in many ways to the the use of propaganda, though, from cradle to grave. I think that's something that we need to really
Yeah,
get a handle on.
it's the way it's the way that we acclimate to
Yeah,
our surroundings, and we do whatever we have to do to survive. you
absolutely.
know but at the same time, the reason why we do these things, like talking about the PLO and talking about things that are going on um, in the Middle East, is because the way that you get this information in the news media, if you don't know all the historical information about what really led up to what's going on, the never-ending war that we're in, then you won't understand. You know, um, you'll believe the fallacy that these people are fulfilling biblical prophecy, and it's not true.
Yeah. You don't have the truth. It's very easy to fall into it and think that they're telling you the truth when they've been lying to you the whole time. You know, it's
You
it's it's
know, and and that all of the stuff that's going on over there is a religious war. It's not a religious war. It is a religious war, but it's not.
nah, it's
Okay.
political. Yeah,
It,
it's always been political. You know, something that Chairman Fred Hampton of the Black Panther, the Illinois chapter, said before he was assassinated in 1969. Politics is war without guns, and war is politics with guns. This just depends on uh, at what point either one is activated. That's all. So
yep.
of course, it's been raised to the armed struggle stage because, of course, the Palestinians were attacked and have been attacked. It's been sustained in that way. So what happens is that the most natural thing to do, self-preservation, is you start resisting, but you do it in an organized fashion. So that's what they did. We went over how the PLO in one of our earlier installments. I'm talking to the chat, sister, you and I, how the
Yeah.
PLO was was created and why. And so you have to understand it's the conditions and environment that creates. And this is a point if I can make this point real fast. These environment and conditions that are evoked by those who are the enemies create PLO. The conditions that Martin Luther King stepped in 1955 created who he became: Malcolm X, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Marcus Garvey. We must understand that. We must, obviously, they teach us history and they distill it down to a person and a date and maybe a place. But when you look at history as an unconnected events that moving forward in a linear sense, going down time continuum, and you look at the factors of environment and conditions, you understand why certain people raise their voices. You know what I mean? The conditions create these people. They just didn't wake up. I'm sure Martin Luther King could have did something else because he knew his life was in danger. He could have did something else and said, "No," you know what I mean? If he could have, that was very clear. So yeah, you have to understand it's a matter of conscience, conviction, all these things, environment, conditions that evoke certain things, certain and I will say it's my belief, and Sekou Touré, who was the president of Guinea, believed that the people are the makers of history. Of course, not just individuals. Individuals could be catalysts, but it's the people who make the history, and people need to never forget that. It's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we totally wrap it up, I wanted to, thank you while you're still up here.
Okay,
'Cause
thank you, sis.
you'll jump down fast before
I
you
will.
down.
Okay, all right.
No, don't jump down yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
I wanted to thank you while you were up here. Thank you so much for for bringing us, because I know, guys, it seems like it's taken us forever, but we're almost to the current day. We're
Right.
almost there, but in order to talk about what's going on right now with some intelligence, you have to give the background of what happened historically so that you understand why we're in this 20 freaking 5-year war. It's probably closer to 30,
Right.
really.
Exactly. Well, sis, I'm as always, I'm always honored. I appreciate. It's always great spending time with you. And I promise I'm going to open up the camera very soon. I'm really not a shy guy like I used to be. I used to be very, actually, believe it or not, very introverted growing up. But thanks to the Marine Corps, it kind of brought me out of my shell. But certainly, it's always a pleasure. And believe you me, it just makes my evening when I get a chance to express myself, and it could be received in the manner in which it's given. So I appreciate it very much.
Well, I appreciate you just coming up here and and help me out with this series. Because I do rely on you, because I know that you can articulate it better than I can.
Well, I studied for a long time. That's all.
Yeah.
I've been at it for a minute. So, but
I
okay.
appreciate that. I appreciate you coming up tonight on this, and we will be continuing this later on. Just when you're ready to do the next installment, the next couple of weeks we'll get on to the next one. But we'll probably do some other stuff in the meantime, because I do want to talk about, on a couple of nights, I want to give some information on some of the people who have created things,
Okay.
historically, since it is Black
Right.
History Month. I want to give it
Right.
something.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you can let me know exactly how soon you want to go
Yeah,
into the next
I will. I will.
installment.
I will.
Yeah, we're getting it. So it'll be 1990 to 1999, 2000.
Yep. That's what I said. We're almost to the present day, y'all. We're almost to the first Gulf War.
Yeah, exactly. So,
All right.
all right.
Thanks for coming up, Terry. And
All right.
I'm gonna get ready to go ahead and wrap it up now.
All right.
All right then. All right, guys. I thank y'all so much for being here. And I know this was a longer one. Generally, when we do these, they're going to run the 2 hours, but I'm going to keep the normal live stream to around an hour, unless we just get into stuff and we go over the hour. But I thank you guys for coming tonight, and let me turn on my camera so y'all can see me. Let me see. Okay, it's gonna let me come up. Hey everybody. All right, y'all. So until tomorrow, peace. Where's my hand? There we go. Peace and blessings from the West Side, guys. I'll see y'all. Bye, everybody.